Sarah Miller's scream tore through the summer air. Time slowed as she rounded the corner of her farmhouse, laundry basket dropped and forgotten. There, in the dappled shade of the oak tree, was a scene from her darkest nightmares. Rex, their newly adopted German shepherd, stood over 8-month-old Jacob's playpen. The dog's muzzle and chest were drenched in blood, crimson dripping onto the grass below. Jacob's wails pierced her ears as her baby thrashed in his pen, face contorted in terror. "No!" The word ripped from Sarah's throat as she lunged forward. Every maternal instinct screamed danger. Her husband had insisted this military dog was gentle. She'd trusted him. Now, this beast, this monster, had attacked her baby. But as she reached for her son, she froze. Something wasn't right. The blood pattern, Jacob's unscratched skin, and there, beneath Rex's protective stance, a scaly form twitched its last. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Sarah Miller hadn't planned on being a single mother at 35. 4 years as a trauma nurse at St. Luke's Regional had prepared her for many things. Blood, broken bones, even death. But nothing had prepared her for the telegram that arrived 9 months ago. Captain James Miller, killed in action in Afghanistan. 3 months later, Jacob was born. Never to meet his father. The rural Missouri farmhouse had been her grandparents', left to her in their will, with its weathered clapboard siding and sprawling 3 acres. It represented both escape and new beginning. The nearest neighbor was a quarter-mile down the gravel road, the Taylor family, with their well-meaning but nosy matriarch, Eleanor, who brought casseroles and unsolicited advice in equal measure. Jacob was a happy baby with James's blue eyes and Sarah's stubborn chin. At 8 months, he was already trying to crawl, determined to explore every inch of his world. His laughter was the only thing that could pierce the fog of grief that sometimes still enveloped Sarah. Without warning, Rex had arrived 3 weeks ago. Another unexpected inheritance. Sarah had known that James worked with military dogs, but she hadn't known he'd made arrangements for his partner to come home to his family if anything happened to him. The 3-year-old German shepherd had served 2 tours in Afghanistan, sniffing out IEDs and protecting his unit. Now he carried invisible wounds of his own, startling at loud noises, sometimes waking with whimpers that mirrored Sarah's own midnight terrors. "A dog like that doesn't belong around babies," Eleanor Taylor had pronounced when Rex first arrived. She wasn't alone in her opinion. The town's small-minded gossip mill had started turning immediately. Sarah had received a visit from Animal Control within days, responding to an anonymous concern. But Sarah had seen how Rex gently sniffed Jacob's tiny fingers, how he positioned himself between the door and the baby's room each night. This dog had been James's companion through war. Surely he could be trusted with James's son. What Sarah didn't fully appreciate was that summer in rural Missouri meant rattlesnake season. The old farmhouse, with its stone foundation and nearby woodpile, provided perfect shelter for the venomous reptiles. It was knowledge the locals possessed but hadn't thought to share with the city nurse playing at country living. The call came at the worst possible time. Sarah had just put Jacob down for his afternoon nap in the portable playpen on the back porch. The summer heat had finally broken, and the shaded porch with its gentle breeze seemed the perfect spot for the baby to sleep while she tackled the mountain of laundry that had accumulated. "Sarah, it's Diane from the hospital." The voice on the phone was tense, professional. Mark Collins just came in. Tractor accident. He's asking for you specifically. Sarah's stomach tightened. Mark Collins had been James's best friend since high school. His family's farm bordered her property on the south side, and he'd been checking in on her regularly since James's death, fixing things around the old house that she couldn't manage. Diane, I'm not on staff anymore. Surely, Dr. Patel, he's refusing treatment until he sees you. Says it's about James. Something he needs to tell you before they put him under. Sarah glanced at the baby monitor. Jacob was sleeping soundly, his tiny chest rising and falling in the peaceful rhythm of infant slumber. The hospital was only 15 minutes away. She could be there and back before he even woke up. But leaving Jacob alone was unthinkable. Mrs. Taylor was visiting her sister in Springfield. There was no one else nearby she trusted. Her eyes fell on Rex, who lay in his usual spot near the playpen, alert eyes tracking her movements. The dog hadn't left Jacob's side since the baby had been placed outside. It was as if he understood his duty without being told. "Guard," Sarah said softly. The command James had taught her over video calls. Rex's ears perked up, his posture straightening. "Watch Jacob." The German shepherd gave a soft whine of acknowledgement, settling into a sphinx position beside the playpen, eyes now fixed on the sleeping baby. "I'll be right there," Sarah told Diane, making her decision. "Tell Mark to hang on. 15 minutes. She knelt beside Rex, looking into his intelligent brown eyes. "I need to trust you," she whispered, running her hand over his thick fur. "James trusted you with his life. Now I'm trusting you with something even more precious." Rex held her gaze, something almost human in his understanding. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Not fear, but a strange certainty. This dog would die before letting anything happen to Jacob. "I'll be back in 20 minutes, 30 tops," she promised, giving Rex a final pat before hurrying to her car. The drive to St. Luke's passed in a blur of anxiety and justifications. Mark wouldn't have asked for her if it wasn't important. Jacob was safely sleeping. Rex was standing guard. 20 minutes. What could possibly happen in 20 minutes? But the emergency room was chaos when she arrived. A multi-vehicle accident on the highway had brought in a wave of trauma cases. Mark's relatively stable condition had been deprioritized. It was 45 minutes before Sarah could even get to his bedside. "Sarah?" Mark grasped her hand, his face pale beneath the dirt and blood. "Thank God. They wouldn't listen. Said I was confused from the pain. What is it?" "Mark, what about James? His last letter, the one that came after. I couldn't bring myself to give it to you when you were pregnant. Then, with the baby, it never seemed the right time." Sarah's heart pounded. "What letter, Mark? What did it say?" "It's in my wallet, in my jeans." He nodded toward the plastic bag containing his belongings. "He knew, Sarah. Somehow he knew he wasn't coming home. The letter, it's about Rex. Something you need to know." As a nurse retrieved Mark's wallet, Sarah glanced at her watch. 50 minutes had passed. Panic fluttered in her chest. "I need to get home to Jacob," she said, already backing toward the door. "Sarah, wait. The letter." "I'll come back," she promised, already running toward the parking lot. The 15-minute drive home took 12. Sarah breaking every speed limit, a sense of foreboding growing with each passing mile. As she turned onto her gravel driveway, the sound hit her, Jacob's screams, higher and more terrified than she'd ever heard from her son. She abandoned the car, engine still running, and sprinted around the house to the back porch. The screams grew louder, punctuated by another sound, a deep, threatening growl that didn't sound like the Rex she knew. When she rounded the corner, the world tilted on its axis. Rex stood rigid, his fur raised, muzzle and chest soaked in dark crimson blood. Jacob thrashed in his playpen, face red with screaming, but otherwise appearing unharmed. The dog's teeth were bared, a growl rumbling from deep in his chest. "Rex, no!" Sarah screamed, her mind unable to process anything except the blood, her baby's cries, and the image of the dog she had trusted standing over her child covered in what could only be blood. Sarah lunged forward, her nurse's training temporarily overridden by maternal instinct. "Get away from him!" she screamed, searching frantically for a weapon. Her hands closed around a rusted garden trowel left on the porch railing. Rex didn't move from his position, his eyes not on Sarah but fixed on something beneath the playpen. That's when she saw it, the distinctive diamond-patterned skin, the rattle now silent. A large timber rattlesnake lay dead on the porch boards, its head nearly severed from its body. The blood covering Rex wasn't Jacob's, it was the snake's, and possibly Rex's own. "Oh, my God," Sarah whispered, the trowel dropping from her suddenly nerveless fingers. As her panic receded, clinical assessment took over. Jacob appeared physically unharmed, though clearly terrified. She scooped him up, running her hands over his body, checking for bites or injuries. Nothing. Not a scratch. His diaper was dry, his skin unmarked. Rex finally relaxed his stance, sitting heavily on the porch, his breathing labored. Now that Sarah looked closer, she could see swelling on his muzzle and front leg. The dog had been bitten, possibly multiple times. "You protected him," she murmured, shock giving way to understanding. "You killed the snake to save Jacob." The letter. Mark had said there was something about Rex she needed to know, cradling Jacob against her shoulder. She approached the German shepherd cautiously. Rex's eyes, usually alert and watchful, were becoming glassy, the swelling on his face increasing visibly. "You need a vet," she realized. "Right now." She recalled what Dr. Gibson, the local veterinarian, had told her when she'd brought Rex in for his checkup. Rattlesnake venom could kill a dog within hours if untreated. The nearest animal hospital with anti-venom was in Springfield, nearly 40 minutes away. Setting Jacob in his car seat, Sarah retrieved an old blanket from the hall closet. Rex didn't resist, as she gently wrapped him, though a whimper escaped when she touched his injured leg. The dog weighed nearly 90 pounds, but adrenaline gave her strength as she half carried, half guided him to the back seat of her car. "Stay with me, Rex," she pleaded as she started the engine. Jacob still whimpering in his car seat. "Just stay with me." During the frantic drive, her phone rang. Eleanor Taylor. "Sarah Miller, I just heard sirens headed toward your place. Are you all right? Is the baby?" "I'm fine. Eleanor, Jacob's fine, but Rex has been bitten by a rattlesnake. He saved Jacob." A pause. "Saved him? What do you mean?" "There was a rattler on the porch. Rex killed it before it could strike Jacob." Another, longer pause. "Sarah, Are you sure that's what happened? The question hit like a slap. What are you talking about? Of course I'm sure. It's just... Well, Bill Hargrove over at Animal Control mentioned that dog of yours has some issues. PTSD. He called it. Military dogs can snap, especially around loud noises, like a baby crying. Sarah's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Eleanor, I saw the dead snake. Rex was bitten protecting my son. If you say so, dear. But maybe you should let Bill know what happened, just to be safe. Sarah ended the call, fury temporarily displacing her fear for Rex. This wasn't the first time Eleanor had implied Rex was dangerous. The older woman had been dropping comments since the day the German Shepherd arrived. She didn't want Daddy's dog here anyway. Did she? Jacob? Sarah murmured, glancing in the rearview mirror at her son, who had finally stopped crying and was now watching Rex with solemn eyes. But Daddy knew better. The memory of James's last video call flooded back. He'd been sitting outside his barracks, Rex at his side. This dog sees things we don't. Sarah, he'd said, scratching behind Rex's ears. Saved our whole unit last week. Refused to move forward on patrol. Turns out there was a pressure plate IED buried under the dirt. The handlers say it's exceptional, even for a trained military dog. Sarah hadn't given those words much thought at the time. Now they echoed in her mind as she sped toward Springfield. By the time they reached Lakeside Animal Emergency Hospital, Rex's breathing had become shallow, his powerful body trembling beneath the blanket. A team of veterinary technicians rushed out with a stretcher when Sarah pulled up to the entrance. Rattlesnake bite about an hour ago, she reported, falling into the clipped cadence of her nursing days. Significant facial swelling, possible multiple strikes. He's a military service dog. The lead technician, a young man with kind eyes, nodded briskly. We'll take good care of him. Are you the owner? Sarah hesitated. In that moment, she realized she'd never truly considered Rex hers. He had been James's partner, then Jacob's protector. Yes, she finally said. Yes, I'm his owner. As they wheeled Rex away, Sarah felt Jacob squirm in her arms. The baby was reaching toward the disappearing stretcher, making the grasping motion that usually indicated he wanted something. You understand, don't you? She whispered to her son. He saved you. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. Bill Hargrove is stopping by your place to check on the snake situation. I gave him your spare key for emergency access. A cold knot formed in Sarah's stomach. The snake situation felt like a transparent excuse. What was Eleanor really up to before she could respond? A different text arrived from a number she didn't recognize. Mrs. Miller, this is Sergeant Dawson from the K-9 Training Center at Fort Leonard Wood. Just heard about Rex through our veteran network. Need to speak with you urgently about his service history. Some things you should know. Sarah sank into a plastic chair in the waiting room. Jacob nestled against her chest, suddenly aware that there was much more to the story of her husband's dog than she had ever suspected. The veterinary hospital waiting room smelled of antiseptic and anxiety. Sarah bounced Jacob gently on her knee, her mind racing between concern for Rex and suspicion about Bill Hargrove's sudden interest in her property. The baby had finally calmed, his chubby fingers playing with the pendant around Sarah's neck, James's dog tag, her most treasured possession. Mrs. Miller. A tall woman in scrubs approached, clipboard in hand. "I'm Dr. Abernathy. I'll be treating Rex." Sarah stood, adjusting Jacob on her hip. "How is he? Will he be okay?" The veterinarian's expression was professionally neutral. "We've started anti-venom treatment, but I won't lie to you, his condition is serious. It appears he sustained multiple bites, which is unusual. Typically, a rattlesnake strikes once and retreats." "He was protecting my son," Sarah explained, her voice catching. "There was a rattlesnake on our porch, near Jacob's playpen." Dr. Abernathy's eyebrows rose slightly. "That would explain it. He likely kept engaging the snake to drive it away from your child." She made a note on her clipboard. "You mentioned he's a military dog." "Yes. He served in Afghanistan with my husband." Sarah swallowed hard. "My late husband." Something softened in the veterinarian's face. "That explains a lot. Military working dogs, especially those with combat experience, develop protective instincts that go beyond typical training. If Rex perceived a threat to your son, he would have engaged without hesitation. Will he survive?" The question came out barely above a whisper. "The next 24 hours will be critical. The good news is that he's young and strong. The concerning news is the amount of venom he received and the time between the bites and treatment." Dr. Abernathy glanced at her watch. "We've administered the first dose of anti-venom, but he'll need more, unfortunately. Rattlesnake anti-venom is expensive, about $800 per vial, and Rex will likely need at least 3 more vials." Sarah did the mental calculation. With the emergency fees, treatment would easily exceed $3,000, money she didn't have. Since leaving her nursing position to care for Jacob, she'd been living on James's military benefits and careful budgeting. "Do whatever he needs," she said firmly. "I'll figure out the money." As Dr. Abernathy returned to the treatment area, Sarah's phone rang. Mark Collins. "Sarah, where are you? The hospital said you left in a hurry." She explained the situation quickly, her voice breaking when she described finding Rex standing over the dead snake. "Jesus," Mark breathed. "And the letter, did you read it?" "No. Everything happened so fast." "What did James say about Rex?" Mark was quiet for a moment. "It's not something I should tell you over the phone. But Sarah, that dog, James called him his guardian angel. Said Rex saved his life more times than he could count. And not just from IEDs. The bond between them was something special." "I'm starting to understand that," Sarah replied, watching as Jacob's eyelids grew heavy, the excitement and fear of the day finally catching up to him. "Listen, I'm still stuck in this hospital bed, but I've called my brother. He's heading over to your place now to check things out. Don't trust Hargrove. He's had it in for Rex since the dog arrived." "What? Why?" "Eleanor Taylor is his aunt, and she's been trying to buy your grandparents' property for years. Your grandfather refused to sell, even when her husband offered above market value. It's about the water rights. Your land has the best access to the creek that feeds half the county's farms." Sarah's mind reeled. Eleanor's constant concerns about Rex suddenly made more sense. If the dog were deemed dangerous and removed, Sarah, a single mother with a young child, might find the isolated property too much to manage alone. "Mark, I've got to go. Keep that letter safe." As she ended the call, a text from an unknown number flashed on her screen. Footage from your security camera has been forwarded to Animal Control, concerned for child safety. Investigation pending. Security camera. Sarah didn't have security cameras. Someone was lying, or worse. Someone had been watching her home without her knowledge. Her thoughts were interrupted by a gentle tap on her shoulder. A middle-aged man in army fatigue stood behind her, his posture military straight, despite the casual setting. "Mrs. Miller, I'm Sergeant Thomas Dawson, K-9 Training Unit, Fort Leonard Wood. We spoke by text." Sarah shifted the now sleeping Jacob to her other arm. "Yes, of course. You said you knew about Rex." Sergeant Dawson nodded, taking a seat beside her. "May I?" He gestured to a folder he was carrying. When Sarah nodded, he opened it to reveal a series of photographs. Rex, younger and more muscular, in a tactical vest. Rex with a group of soldiers, including James. Rex receiving some kind of medal. James beaming proudly beside him. "Your husband's dog isn't just any military K-9, Mrs. Miller. Rex is something of a legend in handler circles. 3 tours, 17 confirmed IED detections, and..." He tapped a photo of Rex standing alertly beside a helicopter. "A Purple Heart recipient. Dogs get Purple Hearts." Not officially, but the men in Captain Miller's unit had one made for Rex after he took shrapnel protecting your husband during an ambush. The same incident where he received this. Dawson pointed to a barely visible scar running along Rex's left flank in one of the photos. "I never noticed," Sarah admitted, feeling a pang of guilt. How much had she missed about this extraordinary animal who had been living under her roof? Rex and your husband saved dozens of lives together. When Captain Miller made arrangements for Rex to come to you after his deployment, it raised some eyebrows. Military working dogs of Rex's caliber are rarely released to private homes, especially with young children present. Sarah tensed. "Are you saying he shouldn't be with us?" Dawson shook his head quickly. "Not at all. Captain Miller made a compelling case. He argued that Rex's specific training and bond with him would transfer to protecting his family. He submitted extensive documentation and video of Rex interacting with children during goodwill missions. The approval went all the way up the chain of command." "Then why are you here?" "Because someone has filed a formal complaint questioning Rex's placement with your family, as the liaison officer who processed his discharge to civilian life. I was notified automatically." He closed the folder. "Based on what you've told me about today's events, it seems Captain Miller's assessment was correct. Rex is doing exactly what James trained him to do, protect what James loved most." Sarah felt tears welling in her eyes. "He might die doing it. The vet says the snake bit him multiple times." Sergeant Dawson's expression remained carefully neutral, but Sarah caught a flicker of concern. "Mrs. Miller, would you permit me to see Rex military working dogs remain under partial DoD jurisdiction even after retirement? I may be able to help with his medical expenses through our veteran K-9 program." For the first time since the ordeal began, Sarah felt a glimmer of hope. "Of course. Thank you." As they approached the treatment area, Dr. Abernathy emerged, her expression grave. "Mrs. Miller, we need to talk. Rex's condition has deteriorated. He's experiencing some respiratory distress, which suggests the venom may be affecting his pulmonary system." "What does that mean?" Sarah asked, clutching Jacob closer. "It means we need to be more aggressive with treatment. I'd like to place him on a ventilator as a precaution and administer a higher dose of anti-venom." Do whatever you need to do, Sarah insisted. Dr. Abernathy hesitated. There's another issue. We're running low on anti-venom this time of year. Snake bites are common, and we've had several cases this week. I've called other facilities in the region, but supplies are limited everywhere. Sergeant Dawson stepped forward. Doctor, I'm Sergeant Dawson from Fort Leonard Wood. Rex is a retired military working dog with the K-9 Corps. Our base veterinary unit maintains a supply of anti-venom. I can have it helicoptered here within the hour. The doctor's relief was palpable. That would be tremendously helpful. As Dawson stepped away to make calls, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Mark's brother. Travis. At your place now. No sign of Hargrove yet, but something's not right. Call me ASAP. Sarah stepped into a quiet corner, Jacob still sleeping against her shoulder, and dialed Travis's number. Sarah? Travis's voice was tight with tension. You need to see this. I'm sending you a video. Moments later, her phone chimed with an incoming file. The video, grainy but clear enough, showed her backyard from an angle she didn't recognize, as if the camera were positioned in a tree at the edge of her property. The timestamp indicated it was from earlier that day, beginning just after she'd left for the hospital. The footage showed Rex lying beside Jacob's playpen, alert but calm. Suddenly, the dog's head snapped up, ears forward. He rose slowly, circling the playpen, nose working overtime. Then, with startling speed, he positioned himself between the playpen and something off camera. The angle shifted, whoever was recording had moved, and now Sarah could see what Rex had sensed, a large rattlesnake emerging from beneath the porch steps, heading directly toward the playpen. Rex's posture changed, his body lowering into an attack stance. When the snake raised its head, preparing to strike, Rex lunged with military precision, grabbing it behind the head. The snake's body whipped violently, striking Rex repeatedly as the dog maintained his grip. Jacob, awakened by the commotion, began to cry. Rex, despite being repeatedly bitten, dragged the still thrashing snake away from the playpen. Only when the reptile finally went limp did Rex return to the baby, positioning his body protectively beside the playpen. The video ended abruptly, as if the person filming had suddenly left. Travis, Sarah whispered, her voice shaking. Who took this video? That's what I'm trying to figure out. It was sent anonymously to Animal Control, but copied to Mark's email because he's on the county board. The message claimed it showed Rex attacking a harmless garden snake near your baby. That's a bald-faced lie. It clearly shows Rex protecting Jacob from a rattlesnake. I know that, and anyone with eyes knows that. But Sarah, someone was watching your house. Someone who wanted to make Rex look dangerous. A cold feeling settled in Sarah's stomach. Where did you find the camera? That's just it. I can't find one, but the angle suggests it was mounted in the old oak at the southwest corner of your property. The oak marked the boundary between her land and the Taylors. Travis, check the crawl space under the porch, near where the snake came from, and be careful, there might be more. While Travis investigated, Sarah approached the treatment area window. Through the glass, she could see Rex lying on a table, tubes and monitors connected to his still form. His brave heart had saved Jacob without hesitation, and now he was fighting for his life because she had trusted Eleanor Taylor's husband when he assured her the property was safe for a child. Mrs. Miller, Dr. Abernathy approached with Sergeant Dawson. "The anti-venom is on its way. In the meantime, would you like to see Rex? Sometimes familiar scents and voices can help, even when a patient is sedated." Sarah nodded gratefully. "Can I bring Jacob in as well? They have a special bond." The doctor hesitated, then relented. "Briefly, we need to maintain a sterile environment." Inside the treatment room, the beeping of monitors provided a rhythmic backdrop to Rex's labored breathing. His powerful body looked somehow diminished against the white table, vulnerable in a way Sarah had never seen before. She approached slowly, Jacob now awake and watching with solemn eyes. "Rex," she whispered, placing her free hand gently on his head. "You brave, good boy. You saved Jacob, just like you saved James all those times." To her surprise, Rex's tail thumped weakly against the table. His eyes remained closed, but he knew she was there. "Jacob and I need you to fight," she continued, tears flowing freely now. "Your family. Rex, our protector, our hero." Jacob squirmed in her arms, reaching toward the dog with determined grunts. Sarah hesitated, then carefully lowered the baby to where he could touch Rex's fur. Jacob patted the dog's shoulder with his tiny hand, making the same satisfied sound he made when reunited with a favorite toy. Rex's eyes fluttered open briefly, focusing on Jacob. The monitors showed a slight increase in heart rate, then stabilization. "Well, I'll be damned," Dr. Abernathy murmured. "His vitals are actually improving with you two here." Sarah's phone buzzed with an incoming call from Travis. "Sarah?" His voice was urgent. "You need to get someone out here now. I checked under the porch like you said. There's a rattlesnake nest, a big one. Looks like they've been living under your house for months. And that's not all. I found a mini camera mounted on a tree branch facing your back porch. It's not some wildlife monitoring setup. It's the kind you use for home security, with remote viewing capabilities." Sarah exchanged a look with Sergeant Dawson, who had overheard the conversation. His expression hardened. "Mrs. Miller," he said quietly, "I believe someone may have deliberately created a dangerous situation for you and your son with the intention of forcing you to get rid of Rex. Or worse." Sarah looked down at her son, still contentedly patting Rex's fur, oblivious to the growing web of danger and deceit surrounding them. Who would go to such lengths, and why target a widow and her infant son? The answers, she suspected, lay in the letter from James that she had yet to read and in the increasingly suspicious behavior of her seemingly concerned neighbor, Eleanor Taylor. The military helicopter carrying the anti-venom arrived with precision that reminded Sarah of James' efficient, reliable, life-saving. 2 uniformed veterinary technicians rushed the precious medicine into the animal hospital, their faces set with the same determination she'd seen countless times on the faces of combat medics. "We've got 4 vials of crofab," the lead technician informed Dr. Abernathy. "Fort Leonard Wood sends their regards and a message that Rex is considered a high-value military asset regardless of retirement status." Dr. Abernathy wasted no time administering the treatment, while Sarah watched anxiously from behind the glass partition, Jacob dozing against her shoulder. The baby had refused to leave Rex's side until exhaustion finally claimed him. "Mrs. Miller," Sergeant Dawson approached, holding a satellite phone. "I have someone who'd like to speak with you." Sarah took the phone with her free hand. "Hello, Mrs. Miller. This is Colonel Richard Westfield, commander of the 701st Military Police Battalion." The voice was crisp, authoritative. "I understand one of our decorated canine veterans is under your care and currently fighting for his life." "Yes, sir. Rex was bitten multiple times by a rattlesnake while protecting my son." "That tracks with everything I know about that dog." Captain Miller spoke of him, often said, Rex had a sixth sense about danger. The colonel paused. "Mrs. Miller, Sergeant Dawson has briefed me on the suspicious circumstances surrounding this incident. Given Rex's status and service record, I'm authorizing a formal investigation into possible tampering with your property." Sarah's heart raced. "You believe someone deliberately endangered my son. Let's just say the coincidence of a hidden camera, a rattlesnake nest near your home, and an immediate attempt to label Rex as dangerous raises significant red flags." Captain Miller had concerns before his death, concerns he shared with his commanding officer. "What concerns?" "I'm not at liberty to discuss details over this channel. However, I've dispatched a security team to your property to coordinate with local law enforcement. In the meantime, is there somewhere secure you and your son can stay once Rex is stabilized?" Sarah thought of her options. Her parents lived in Arizona too far. Most of her local friends were hospital colleagues who wouldn't have room for a woman, a baby, and an injured German shepherd. "I'm not sure," she admitted. "We'll arrange accommodations at Fort Leonard Wood if necessary," Colonel Westfield assured her. "Rex saved dozens of American lives in Afghanistan. The least we can do is ensure his family's safety now." His family. The words hit Sarah with unexpected force. That's what they were, her, Jacob, and Rex. A family forged by James's love and Rex's devotion. "Thank you, Colonel. I appreciate that." After ending the call, Sarah turned to Sergeant Dawson. "What aren't you telling me? What concerns did James have?" Dawson's expression remained carefully neutral. "Ma'am, I think that's a conversation best had after we're certain Rex will pull through. For now, let's focus on his recovery." As if on cue, Dr. Abernathy emerged from the treatment room, her face showing cautious optimism. "The anti-venom is working. His vitals are stabilizing, and the swelling has stopped increasing. The next few hours will be critical. But I'm much more hopeful now." Relief washed over Sarah like a physical wave. "Can I see him?" "Briefly. He needs rest, but your presence seems to have a positive effect on him." Inside the treatment room, Rex looked marginally better. The labored breathing had eased, and one eye cracked open as Sarah approached. His tail thumped weakly against the table. "Hey, hero," she whispered, stroking his head gently. "The medicine is working. You just need to keep fighting." Jacob stirred against her shoulder, his blue eyes so like James's blinking open. When he spotted Rex, he made a happy gurgling sound and reached out his tiny hands. "See, Jacob needs you to get better," Sarah continued, holding her son where he could see the dog but not disturb the medical equipment. "We both do." Rex's eye tracked the baby's movements, and despite his weakened state, Sarah could see the alertness there, the protective instinct still strong. A nurse appeared at the door. "Mrs. Miller, there's a Miss Eleanor Taylor here asking for you. Says she's your neighbor." Sarah stiffened. "Tell her I'm not available." She's quite insistent. Says it's an emergency regarding your property. Sergeant Dawson stepped forward. I'll handle this. Sarah nodded gratefully, turning her attention back to Rex as Dawson left the room. Through the window, she could see Eleanor in the waiting area, looking uncharacteristically disheveled, her usually immaculate gray hair escaping its tight bun. Minutes later, Dawson returned, his expression grim. "Mrs. Miller, we may have a situation. Ms. Taylor claims there's been a fire reported near your property line. The local fire department has been dispatched." "A fire, but it rained yesterday?" "Exactly. Which makes a spontaneous brush fire highly unlikely." Dawson lowered his voice. "She also mentioned that her husband Harold has been dealing with your snake problem all afternoon." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Travis is still at my house. I've already alerted him, and he's in contact with the military security team en route. But, Mrs. Miller, I need to ask, did you give anyone permission to enter your property today?" "Only Travis. Certainly not Harold Taylor." Dr. Abernathy, who had been monitoring Rex's vitals, joined the conversation. "If there's a potential emergency at your home, you should go. Rex is stable for now, and will contact you immediately if anything changes." Sarah hesitated, torn between staying with Rex and investigating what was happening at her property. "I can't leave him." "Mrs. Miller," Dawson said gently, "if someone is deliberately creating dangerous situations at your home, we need to document it. The more evidence we gather, the better we can protect you, Jacob, and Rex in the long term." The logic was sound, but the thought of leaving Rex in his vulnerable state made Sarah's chest tighten. She leaned close to the German Shepherd's ear. "I'll be back soon," she promised. "You focus on getting better." Outside in the waiting area, Eleanor Taylor paced nervously, her sensible shoes squeaking on the linoleum floor. When she spotted Sarah, her expression cycled rapidly from concern to relief, to something that looked almost like guilt. "Sarah, thank goodness. I've been trying to reach you for hours. There's a situation at your place. Harold noticed smoke coming from the old woodpile near your property line." "Really? And what was Harold doing on my property without permission?" "Eleanor," the older woman blinked rapidly. "Well, after you mentioned the snake, he was concerned there might be more. He was just being neighborly, checking the areas where rattlers typically nest." "How thoughtful," Sarah replied, not bothering to hide her skepticism. "And did he happen to bring his camera equipment during this neighborly visit?" Eleanor's face paled slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do. Just like I think you know why someone would send animal control a video deliberately misrepresenting Rex as dangerous." Sergeant Dawson stepped forward, his military bearing making Eleanor take an instinctive step back. "Ms. Taylor, I should inform you that tampering with a retired military working dog's placement is a federal offense, as is creating hazardous conditions with intent to harm. Harm I would never—" Eleanor's hand fluttered to her throat. "I've only ever been concerned about Sarah and the baby. That dog has a history of heroism," Sarah interrupted. "Rex has a Purple Heart, Eleanor. He saved countless American lives in Afghanistan, including my husband's. And today, he saved Jacob from a rattlesnake that somehow found its way onto my porch." Eleanor's eyes darted between Sarah and Dawson. "I'm just trying to help. Harold said those old houses like yours are magnets for snakes. The foundation, has been perfectly sound for 60 years, Sarah finished. Until recently. Apparently, a commotion at the entrance drew their attention. Travis Collins burst through the doors, his face flushed and dirt-streaked. "Sarah, thank God you're here." He rushed over, lowering his voice. "You need to see this. The military guys arrived just as Harold was leaving your property. They caught him red-handed." "Caught him doing what?" Sarah demanded. Travis held up his phone, showing a photo of Harold Taylor beside Sarah's porch, a burlap sack in one hand and what appeared to be a long metal hook in the other. "Snake handling equipment," Travis explained. "And the sack was moving. Sarah, he was planting rattlesnakes on your property." Eleanor made a strangled sound. "That's absurd. Harold would never—" "We have him on video, ma'am," Travis countered. "My truck dash cam caught the whole thing. He's currently explaining himself to some very unhappy military police officers." Sarah felt her knees weaken. The deliberate malice required to plant venomous snakes where a baby played was unfathomable. "Why?" she asked, turning to Eleanor, whose face had crumpled into something between shame and defiance. "Why would you do this?" "We didn't want anyone to get hurt," Eleanor insisted, tears welling in her eyes. "We just needed you to see that place isn't safe for you and the baby, that you'd be better off somewhere else." "So you could buy my land?" Sarah's voice rose. "You endangered my son for water rights." "It's not just water rights," Eleanor snapped, her composure finally breaking. "That property has been wrongfully withheld from my family for 3 generations. Your grandfather knew the original deed had a reversion clause if the property ever passed out of direct male descent. When your father showed no interest in it, the land should have reverted to the Taylor family." Sergeant Dawson placed a restraining hand on Sarah's arm, sensing her building fury. "Ms. Taylor, are you admitting to conspiracy to commit fraud and endangered a child?" Eleanor's face paled as the implications of her outburst sank in. We never meant." "Harold said the snakes would stay under the porch, that you'd just see one occasionally and get scared enough to move to town where you belong." "Where I belong?" Sarah's voice shook with rage. "You decided where my son and I belong, and then planted deadly rattlesnakes to force the issue." "The dog wasn't supposed to be there," Eleanor cried. "You always kept him inside before. How were we to know you'd leave the baby with him today of all days?" The pieces clicked together in Sarah's mind. The call from the hospital, Mark's accident. That was stage 2, wasn't it? Eleanor's silence was confirmation enough. Travis stepped closer. "Sarah, there's more. The military team found evidence that someone had been deliberately damaging your foundation to create access points for snakes and other pests. It looks like it's been going on for months." The systematic campaign against her was staggering in its calculation. While she'd been grieving James and caring for their newborn, the Taylors had been literally undermining the safety of her home. "I want to press charges," Sarah said firmly, looking directly at Eleanor. "All of them. Trespassing, endangerment, animal cruelty, fraud, whatever applies." Sergeant Dawson nodded. "The military has jurisdiction regarding wrecks, and will be pursuing federal charges for interference with a service animal. Local authorities will handle the rest." Eleanor seemed to shrink before their eyes. the neighborhood matriarch reduced to a frightened old woman facing serious criminal charges. "You don't understand," she whispered. "That land was supposed to be ours. My grandfather built that house, but yours stole the deed during the Depression. We've been trying to reclaim it ever since." "So this has been some kind of decades-long family feud?" Sarah asked incredulously. "And you decided to target a war widow and her infant son to settle the score?" Before Eleanor could respond, Dr. Abernathy rushed into the waiting area, her expression urgent. "Mrs. Miller-Rex is experiencing complications. His breathing is becoming compromised. We need to intubate immediately." Sarah's world narrowed to a pinpoint of fear. What happened? He was stable. Sometimes with rattlesnake venom, there's a delayed reaction. The antivenom counteracts the spread, but damage already done can worsen. We need to act now. Thrusting Jacob into Travis's arms, Sarah raced after the veterinarian, all thoughts of the Taylors and their generational land dispute forgotten. Nothing mattered now except Rex's survival. In the treatment room, a team worked efficiently around Rex's suddenly still form. The monitor showed his heartbeat erratic, weakening. "What can I do?" Sarah pleaded. "Doctor." Abernathy didn't look up from her work. "Talk to him. Let him hear your voice. Some part of him might still be fighting." Sarah moved to Rex's head, leaning close to his ear. "Rex, listen to me. You can't give up now. Jacob needs you. I need you." Her voice broke. "James would be so proud of what you did today. You kept your promise to him to protect us. Please, Rex, keep fighting." The monitor showed a heart rate growing more irregular by the second. "We're losing him," a technician reported. "No!" Sarah cried, her hand gripping Rex's fur. "Rex, stay with us." As if in response to her plea, the treatment room door burst open. Sergeant Dawson entered, carrying Jacob. "The baby wouldn't stop screaming," he explained. "I thought maybe." Sarah nodded, taking Jacob and bringing him close to Rex. "Look, Rex, Jacob's here. Your boy is here." Jacob reached out, patting Rex's muzzle with his tiny hand. "Bah!" he said clearly, his first distinct syllable. Whether it was the baby's touch, his voice, or simply Rex's indomitable spirit, the monitor suddenly showed a stronger heartbeat, not regular yet, but fighting back from the brink. "Well, I'll be damned," Dr. Abernathy murmured. "Keep doing whatever you're doing." Outside the window, the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Somewhere out there, Harold Taylor was explaining his actions to military police. Eleanor was facing the consequences of a feud that had poisoned 3 generations, and Sarah's home, the legacy her grandfather had fought to preserve, had been systematically undermined. But here, in this moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was Rex's heartbeat, growing stronger with each passing minute. What mattered was Jacob's tiny hand on the fur of the dog who had nearly sacrificed everything to protect him. What mattered was that somehow, against all odds, James' final gift to them might just survive to fight another day. Night fell over the veterinary hospital as Sarah maintained her vigil beside Rex. Jacob had finally succumbed to exhaustion. Sleeping in a makeshift bed the staff had created from blankets in a large examination basket. The rhythmic beeping of monitors provided a constant reminder that Rex still clung to life. His condition stabilized but critical. "You should get some rest," Dr. Abernathy advised, entering the room with fresh IV bags. "We have a cot set up in the staff lounge." Sarah shook her head. "I can't leave him. Not after he refused to leave Jacob." The veterinarian's expression softened. "He's a remarkable animal. Military working dogs are exceptional to begin with. But Rex?" She checked his vitals, making notes on his chart. "In 20 years of practice, I've never seen a dog take multiple rattlesnake bites and still manage to protect a child. The bond he has with your son is extraordinary." "It's more than training, isn't it?" Sarah asked, stroking Rex's head gently. "Much more. Dogs like Rex develop what handlers call emotional intelligence. They don't just follow commands, they make independent decisions based on their assessment of threats and their bond with their humans." Dr. Abernathy adjusted Rex's blanket. "Your husband must have been quite a handler to develop that level of trust." "He was," Sarah whispered, fingering James's dog tag around her neck. "But I never really understood until today." A soft knock at the door announced Sergeant Dawson's return. His uniform was wrinkled, but his posture remained military straight, despite the late hour. "Mrs. Miller, I have updates from both the military investigation and local authorities. If you're ready to hear them." Sarah nodded, careful not to disturb Rex. "Harold Taylor is in custody, charged with criminal trespassing, reckless endangerment, animal cruelty, and attempted property fraud. When confronted with the evidence, he admitted to a systematic campaign to drive you from your property. And Eleanor, also in custody as a co-conspirator. She's been more cooperative since learning the potential sentences they're facing." Dawson paused. "Mrs. Miller, they've been tampering with your property for months, weakening foundation supports, creating entry points for vermin and snakes, even contaminating portions of your well." Sarah's blood ran cold. "The well, we've been drinking that water. Fortunately, they only introduced harmless mineral contaminants enough to make it taste unpleasant, hoping you'd assume the well was failing. The military forensic team has collected samples of everything." The calculated malice was staggering. While she'd been grieving James and adjusting to motherhood, the Taylors had been methodically sabotaging her home, endangering her child, all for a property dispute that began before she was born. "There's more," Dawson continued. "When the forensic team searched the Taylors' home, they found extensive documentation related to your property surveys, historical deeds, water rights paperwork. They also found Captain Miller's personnel file." Sarah's head snapped up. "James's file? How did they get that?" "Eleanor's son works as a civilian contractor at Fort Leonard Wood. He apparently accessed your husband's records inappropriately. That's how they knew about Rex's scheduled arrival and his background." "So they planned this all along," Sarah said, the realization dawning. "They knew a military working dog would protect us, so they had to discredit Rex to force him away." Dawson nodded grimly. "It appears they've been watching your property for some time, documenting Rex's behavior, waiting for an opportunity. When you left Jacob with Rex today, they saw their chance." A wave of nausea swept through Sarah. The violation of her property, her privacy, her trust was profound. "There's one more thing you should know," Dawson added, his voice softening. "We found a letter in Harold's desk. From your husband." Sarah's heart seemed to stop. "A letter. But Mark said..." This appears to be different from the one your friend mentioned. This one was addressed to the Taylors, dated 2 weeks before Captain Miller's death." Dawson handed her a plastic evidence bag containing a single sheet of paper. Through the clear material, Sarah could see James's distinctive handwriting, confident, slightly slanted to the right. "Mr. and Mrs. Taylor. This letter serves as formal notice that I am aware of your continued attempts to claim the Miller property through fraudulent means. Military intelligence has documented multiple instances of trespassing, tampering, and unauthorized surveillance of my family's land. As my grandfather explained to yours in 1947 and my father to yours in 1978, the property was legally purchased during the Depression with full documentation and witness testimony. Your family's claim of a gentleman's agreement has been rejected by 3 separate courts. My wife will be relocating to the property with our child after my current deployment. She will not be alone. In addition to local law enforcement being notified of your past actions, my service dog, Rex, will accompany her. He is trained to detect and respond to threats, including human intruders. This is your final warning. Any further attempts to harass my family or lay claim to our property will result in criminal charges and restraining orders. Captain James Miller, United States Army." Sarah's hands trembled as she finished reading. "He knew. All this time, he knew what they were doing." "Captain Miller was military intelligence," Dawson explained. "He likely had resources to monitor situations back home that civilians wouldn't, based on what we're finding. He had good reason to be concerned." A strangled sound escaped Sarah's throat, something between a laugh and a sob. "He sent Rex to protect us from snakes." "All right. Just not the kind that slither on the ground." The realization that James had known the danger, had tried to protect them even from beyond the grave, brought a fresh wave of grief and gratitude. While she'd been oblivious to the threat lurking next door, James had seen it clearly enough to send his most trusted partner to stand guard. "The letter Mark has," Sarah said, wiping tears from her cheeks. "I need to read it. I've arranged for him to be transported here tomorrow morning, medical conditions permitting," Dawson assured her. "In the meantime, a full security detail remains at your property, and we've arranged temporary accommodations for you and Jacob at Fort Leonard Wood once Rex is stable enough to be moved." Sarah glanced at her son, sleeping peacefully in his makeshift bed, then at Rex, fighting for his life after fulfilling his promise to James. "Thank you, Sergeant, for everything." Dawson nodded, his professional demeanor softening slightly. "Captain Miller was highly respected. Mrs. Miller, he saved my life in Kandahar province. Helping his family is the least I can do." After Dawson departed, Sarah returned to her vigil beside Rex. The weight of the day's revelations pressed heavily on her shoulders. Her home, the home she'd planned to raise Jacob in, the legacy from her grandparents had been systematically undermined. The neighbors she'd tried to befriend had been plotting against her from the beginning. The sense of violation was profound. And yet, amid the betrayal and danger, there had been loyalty and protection beyond measure. Rex had stood guard exactly as James had intended, risking his life without hesitation to keep their son safe. "You knew, didn't you?" she whispered to Rex, gently stroking his fur. "You've been trying to warn me all along." She recalled how Rex would growl when Eleanor brought over casseroles, how he'd pace restlessly whenever Harold came to fix something around the property. The dog had been alerting to the true threats while she'd dismissed his behavior as adjustment difficulties. The cardiac monitor beeped, showing a slight increase in Rex's heart rate as if in response to her voice. One eye cracked open briefly, focusing on her before drifting closed again. "James was right to trust you," Sarah continued, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry I didn't understand sooner." A soft whimper escaped the dog, and his tail moved slightly under the blanket. "Doctor!" Abernathy entered, checking the monitors with practiced efficiency. "His vitals are improving," she noted with cautious optimism. "The swelling in his airway is subsiding, and his kidney function looks better than I expected given the venom load." "Will he recover completely?" Sarah asked, hope creeping into her voice for the first time in hours. "It's too soon to make promises, but military working dogs are incredibly resilient. If anyone can pull through this, it's Rex." The veterinarian checked his IV lines. "The next 12 hours will tell us more. The fact that he's responding to your voice is an excellent sign." As if to confirm this assessment, Rex's tail thumped weakly against the table. "See that?" Dr. Abernathy smiled. "He's fighting hard. For you and Jacob." After the doctor left, Sarah settled back in her chair, one hand resting on Rex's flank, the other holding James's dog tag. The parallel wasn't lost on her. Both James and Rex had placed themselves between danger and those they loved. One had made the ultimate sacrifice in a distant desert, the other lay fighting for his life after doing the same on her back porch. "James," she whispered to the empty room, "I finally understand what you meant about Rex seeing things we don't. He saw the danger when I was blind to it. He protected our son when I made a terrible mistake." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I promise you, if he pulls through this, I'll never doubt him again." Outside the window, the first hints of dawn lightened the eastern sky. A new day approached, bringing with it uncertainty about their home, their future, and whether the loyal guardian who had saved their son would live to see another sunset. But for the first time since receiving news of James's death, Sarah felt something like his presence in the steadfast loyalty of his dog, in the letter that showed how he'd tried to protect them, in the son who carried his eyes and spirit. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, she, Jacob, and Rex, if God granted him the strength to recover. As if reading her thoughts, Rex sighed in his sleep, his breathing a little stronger, a little steadier than before. Morning light streamed through the veterinary hospital windows as Sarah dozed in the uncomfortable chair beside Rex's treatment table. Jacob had woken earlier, and a kind-hearted veterinary technician was entertaining him in the staff lounge, giving Sarah a brief respite. The monitors tracking Rex's vital signs showed improvement, his heart rate stronger, oxygen levels stabilizing, kidney function slowly returning to normal parameters. A gentle knock roused Sarah from her half-sleep. Mark Collins entered in a wheelchair, pushed by his brother Travis. Despite the hospital gown and bandaged leg, Mark's face showed relief at seeing her. "Sarah," he said, reaching for her hand. "Thank God you're all right. When I heard what happened—" "We're okay," she assured him, squeezing his fingers. "Thanks to Rex." Mark's gaze shifted to the German Shepherd. "How is he?" "Fighting. The doctors are cautiously optimistic." Sarah gestured to his wheelchair. "Should you be out of the hospital?" "Probably not, but I signed myself out AMA. This couldn't wait." Mark reached into a small bag hanging from his wheelchair and withdrew a sealed envelope, slightly yellowed at the edges. James's letter. The one he sent me right before. Sarah took the envelope with trembling fingers. Her name was written on the front in James's distinctive handwriting, bold, confident strokes that brought an immediate lump to her throat. "I'll give you some privacy," Mark offered, nodding to Travis to wheel him out. "No," Sarah said quickly. "Stay, please. Whatever James wrote, you've kept it safe all this time. You should be here." When they nodded, Sarah carefully broke the seal and unfolded the single page inside. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then I didn't make it home, and Mark has finally given you this letter. Don't be angry with him for waiting. I asked him to hold it until you and the baby were settled, until the time was right. There's so much I want to tell you, so much I wish I could say in person while holding our child, but most importantly, I need you to know about Rex. He's more than just my service dog. Sarah, from the day we were paired, Rex and I developed a connection that goes beyond training. The handlers here have a saying, some dogs are born to serve, but a few are born to save. Rex is the latter. 3 times he's saved my life when no one else could have. Once, by refusing to enter a building that intelligence had cleared, but which Rex somehow knew contained explosives. Once, by alerting to a sniper position no human had detected. And once, by throwing himself between me and shrapnel that would have killed me. But it's not just his training that makes him special. Rex has an uncanny ability to sense danger before it manifests what the old-timers here call the knowing. I've seen him alert to threats that weren't visible, detectable, or even logically predictable. I've arranged for Rex to come to you if anything happens to me, not just as a living reminder of me, but because I need to know you and our child will have his protection. Where we're deploying next, I can't shake the feeling that I might not come back. If that happens, trust Rex with your lives. He will protect our baby as fiercely as he's protected me. There's something else you should know. The Taylors next door to my grandparents' property have been trying to claim that land for generations. I've left documentation with my commanding officer about their previous attempts, the accidents they've engineered, the legal maneuvers they've tried. They're dangerous in their obsession. Sarah, Rex knows this. He'll recognize threats that you might miss. My love, I hope this letter proves unnecessary. I hope I return home to tear it up myself, to watch our child grow with you by my side. But if fate has other plans, know that my heart is always with you. And in Rex, I've sent the best part of me to keep you safe. All my love, forever. James' tears flowed freely down Sarah's cheeks as she finished reading. The letter trembled in her hands, James's last words to her. His final act of protection. "He knew," she whispered. "Somehow, he knew." Mark nodded solemnly. James always had a sixth sense about danger. That's why he rose through the ranks so quickly in intelligence. "Why didn't you give me this sooner?" Sarah asked, not accusingly but seeking understanding. Mark looked down, guilt evident in his expression. "At first, you were so deep in grief, then focused on the pregnancy. After Jacob was born, you seemed to be healing, finding your footing. I was afraid the letter would reopen wounds." He sighed heavily. "Then when Rex arrived, and you were struggling with him. I thought about sharing it, but by then, the Taylors had already ingratiated themselves with you. Eleanor bringing casseroles, Harold fixing things around the house. I was afraid you wouldn't believe James's warnings. I might not have, Sarah admitted, remembering how she'd initially seen the Taylors' attention as neighborly kindness rather than calculated surveillance. A weak whimper drew their attention. Rex's eyes were open, watching Sarah intently despite his weakened state. "Rex," she breathed, moving to his side and gently stroking his head. "You're awake." The German shepherd's tail thumped weakly against the table, his gaze never leaving her face. "He understands," Travis said quietly from the doorway. "I swear that dog understands everything." Dr. Abernathy entered, her expression brightening when she saw Rex's alert state. "Well, look who's decided to rejoin us." She checked his vitals, nodding with satisfaction. "Remarkable improvement overnight. The anti-venom has neutralized the toxins, and his organs are recovering faster than I anticipated." "So he'll be okay?" Sarah asked, hardly daring to hope. "Barring complications. Yes, he'll need time to recover fully. The muscle damage from the bites will require physical therapy, and he'll be weak for several weeks. But I believe Rex will make a complete recovery." Relief crashed over Sarah like a wave, leaving her lightheaded. "Thank God," she whispered, pressing her forehead gently against Rex's. "Thank you for fighting," as if understanding. Rex lifted his head slightly and licked her cheek once before resting back on the table, clearly exhausted by even that small effort. Sergeant Dawson appeared in the doorway, his expression grave despite the good news about Rex. "Mrs. Miller, may I speak with you?" Sarah followed him into the hallway, apprehension building at his serious demeanor. "The forensic team completed their assessment of your property last night," Dawson began. "I'm afraid the news isn't good. The foundation damage is extensive, far worse than initially thought. The Taylors have been systematically weakening the structural integrity of your home for months, possibly years." Sarah leaned against the wall for support. "How bad?" "The county inspector has condemned the structure. It's not safe for habitation." The blow was staggering. The farmhouse had been her grandparents' pride, the legacy they'd fought to protect through the Depression and beyond. It was the home where she'd planned to raise Jacob, where she'd hoped to build a new life after losing James. "There's more," Dawson continued. "The wildlife experts confirmed what we suspected. The rattlesnake nest under your porch didn't form naturally. There's evidence of human intervention specifically. The creation of an artificial hibernaculum designed to attract and retain venomous snakes. They deliberately brought snakes to my property." Sarah's voice rose in disbelief. "Where my baby plays." "It appears so. The experts found remnants of rodent carcasses that had been strategically placed to attract snakes to that location. Given the established pattern of the Taylors' activities, we have strong reason to believe they were responsible. The calculated malice required to plant deadly snakes where a child might encounter them was beyond comprehension." Sarah felt physically ill at the thought of how close Jacob had come to disaster. "The district attorney is adding attempted homicide to the charges," Dawson informed her. "With the evidence we've gathered, both Taylors are facing significant prison time." A commotion down the hall interrupted their conversation. A nurse hurried toward them, her expression troubled. "Mrs. Miller, there's an elderly woman in the waiting area causing a disturbance. She's demanding to see you, says she's Eleanor Taylor's sister." Sarah exchanged a glance with Dawson. "Martha Taylor. I've met her a few times at community events. She claims to have information you need to hear. Security is monitoring her, but she seems genuinely distressed." Curiosity overrode caution. "I'll speak with her." But not alone. With Dawson accompanying her, Sarah entered the waiting area to find a frail woman in her 70s perched anxiously on the edge of a chair. Unlike Eleanor's perfectly coiffed appearance, Martha Taylor's white hair hung in a simple braid down her back, her weathered face free of makeup. "Mrs. Miller," Martha said, rising shakily to her feet. "Thank you for seeing me. I understand if you want me to leave, but there are things you need to know, things I should have told you months ago." Sarah studied the older woman, seeing genuine distress in her rheumy eyes. "What things, Mrs. Taylor? Please, call me Martha." She gestured to the chairs. "May I sit? My joints aren't what they used to be." Once they were seated, Martha withdrew a worn leather folder from her large handbag. "First, I want you to know I had no part in what Eleanor and Harold did. I've been estranged from my sister for years, precisely because of her obsession with your family's land." She opened the folder, revealing yellowed documents protected in plastic sleeves. "The feud between our families didn't begin the way Eleanor claims. It wasn't about your grandfather cheating ours during the Depression. The truth is much uglier." Martha withdrew a faded photograph showing two young men in 1930s clothing, arms around each other's shoulders. Standing before the farmhouse Sarah recognized as her grandparents' home. "This is your grandfather, Thomas Miller, with my father, William Taylor. They weren't enemies, they were best friends. More than friends. In fact, though such things weren't spoken of openly in those days." Sarah's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying they loved each other. Mrs. Miller, when the Depression hit, your great-grandfather lost everything except that parcel of land. William and Thomas pooled their resources to build the farmhouse together, intending to share it. But then Thomas met your grandmother, fell in love, and married her." Martha carefully turned pages in her folder, revealing letters and documents as she continued. "My father was heartbroken but eventually married as well. He never stopped loving Thomas, though when your grandfather inherited the property after your great-grandfather's death, he offered my father a legal partnership in the land. This is the agreement they signed." She pointed to a document dated 1947 bearing both men's signatures. "It stated that the property would remain with the Miller family as long as direct descendants occupied it. If the Miller line ever abandoned the property, ownership would transfer to the Taylor family." Understanding dawned. "So when I left the property vacant after my grandparents died?" Martha nodded. "Eleanor and Harold believed the reversion clause had been triggered, but there were two problems with their claim. First, your father never formally relinquished his interest, though he chose to live elsewhere. Second, the agreement specified abandonment, not temporary vacancy. When James and I decided to move there after his deployment, it eliminated any chance of claiming abandonment." Martha's expression darkened. Eleanor was furious. She and Harold had already invested in irrigation systems based on access to the creek running through your property. They'd taken out loans, made commitments to agricultural corporations. The scope of the conspiracy expanded in Sarah's mind. "So they decided to force us out. I discovered their plans months ago," Martha admitted, shame evident in her voice. I confronted Eleanor, threatened to expose them. She promised they were only creating minor inconveniences, bad water, pest problems, things that might convince a city girl to move back to town. And you believed her? Sarah couldn't keep the accusation from her voice. Martha's eyes filled with tears. I wanted to. She's my only sister. But when I heard about the rattlesnakes, about what happened to your son and that brave dog, she shook her head. I couldn't stay silent any longer. Why are you telling me this now? Sarah asked. My home is destroyed. Rex nearly died. Jacob could have been killed. Because you deserve the truth, and because I want to make amends, in whatever small way I can. Martha withdrew one final document from her folder. This is the deed to my property, 40 acres adjoining yours on the east side. It includes a farmhouse built in the 1950s, smaller than yours but structurally sound. I'm signing it over to you. Sarah stared at the document in shock. I can't accept that. You can, and you should. I have no children. Mrs. Miller, when I die, it would go to Eleanor. I'd rather see it go to someone who will love it as my father loved your grandfather's land. Martha placed the folder in Sarah's hands. Consider it restitution for what my family has done to yours across 3 generations. Before Sarah could respond, Dr. Abernathy appeared in the doorway, her expression urgent. Mrs. Miller, you need to come quickly. Rex is experiencing complications. His breathing is deteriorating rapidly. Sarah thrust the folder into Sergeant Dawson's hands and raced back to the treatment room, where alarms blared from the monitors surrounding Rex. The German shepherd's body convulsed on the table. His eyes rolled back, oxygen levels plummeting as veterinary staff worked frantically around him. What's happening? Sarah cried. Delayed reaction to the venom. Dr. Abernathy explained tersely, administering medications through Rex's IV. Sometimes it affects the nervous system hours or days after the initial crisis appears resolved. Do something, Sarah pleaded, watching in horror as Rex's strong body betrayed him, muscles spasming violently. We're trying everything, the doctor assured her, her voice steady despite the chaos. But Mrs. Miller, you should prepare yourself. These secondary reactions can be fatal even with prompt treatment. The world seemed to slow around Sarah as she watched the team fighting to save Rex. After everything, the snake, the revelations about the Taylors, the loss of her home, the thought of losing Rex too was unbearable. He was her last connection to James, Jacob's protector, the one who had seen danger when she was blind to it. Please, she whispered, not sure if she was addressing the medical team, God or Rex himself. Please don't leave us now. For 3 agonizing minutes, Sarah watched as Rex's powerful body convulsed on the treatment table. Dr. Abernathy and her team worked with methodical urgency, administering medications, monitoring vital signs, and providing oxygen support. The German shepherd's usually alert eyes remained rolled back, his teeth clenched in a grimace of pain that tore at Sarah's heart. Come on, Rex, Dr. Abernathy murmured, injecting another medication into his IV line. Fight this. You're too stubborn to give up now. As if responding to the challenge, the convulsions gradually subsided. The cardiac monitor showed a rhythm returning to normal, though Rex remained unconscious, his breathing shallow but stable. He's stabilizing, Dr. Abernathy announced, relief evident in her voice. These secondary reactions can be terrifying, but he's pulling through. Sarah released the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. What happened? Neurotoxic effects of the venom sometimes manifest after the initial crisis passes. His body mounted an immune response to the remaining venom components. The veterinarian checked Rex's pupils, nodding with satisfaction. The good news is that these secondary reactions, while frightening, often represent the final stage of venom processing. Once past this hurdle, recovery usually progresses without further complications. Sarah gently stroked Rex's head, careful to avoid the areas swollen from snake bites. You hear that? Hero, the worst is over now. You just need to rest and get strong again. Rex's ear twitched slightly at the sound of her voice, a small but encouraging sign of responsiveness. He should sleep for several hours after this episode. Dr. Abernathy explained. Why don't you take this opportunity to check on Jacob and get some rest yourself? We'll monitor Rex constantly and call you immediately if anything changes. Reluctantly, Sarah agreed. The emotional and physical toll of the past 24 hours was catching up with her, and Jacob needed attention too. She found her son in the staff lounge, happily playing with a collection of empty gauze containers the veterinary technicians had repurposed as toys. "There's my brave boy," she murmured, scooping him up and breathing in his sweet baby scent. Jacob gurgled happily, patting her face with his tiny hands. Sergeant Dawson approached, still holding Martha Taylor's folder. "Mrs. Miller, I've arranged temporary accommodations for you and Jacob at Fort Leonard Wood, as we discussed. There's a suite in the officers' quarters available whenever you're ready. Rex can be transferred to the base veterinary hospital once Dr. Abernathy clears him for transport." The kindness of the military community reaching out to protect James's family brought fresh tears to Sarah's eyes. "Thank you. I don't know how I'll ever repay all this assistance." "No repayment necessary," Dawson replied firmly. "Captain Miller was one of ours. So is Rex. That makes you and Jacob part of the family, too." Mark Collins wheeled himself into the lounge, Travis following close behind. "Sarah, I just heard about Rex's setback. How is he?" "Stable now. Dr. Abernathy thinks he's through the worst of it." She managed a weak smile. "He's as stubborn as James was." "Listen," Mark said. "Travis and I have been talking. My farmhouse has a mother-in-law cottage that's sitting empty since my mother passed. It's single level, fully furnished, with its own fenced yard, perfect for you, Jacob, and Rex while you figure out your next steps. It's yours for as long as you need it." The generosity of the offer touched Sarah deeply. "Mark, that's incredibly kind, but—" "No buts," he interrupted. "James would have done the same for me in a heartbeat. Besides," he added with a wry smile, "having a nurse living on the property might come in handy during my recovery." Before Sarah could respond, Martha Taylor approached hesitantly from the waiting area. "Mrs. Miller, I don't mean to intrude, but I wanted to make sure you understood my offer is genuine. The deed to my property is legally prepared and ready for transfer, regardless of whether you choose to live there or sell it." Sarah studied the elderly woman, seeing genuine remorse in her weathered face. Unlike Eleanor's calculated charm, Martha's sincerity was palpable. "Mrs. Taylor, Martha, I appreciate your gesture more than I can express, but I need time to consider what's best for Jacob and Rex." She glanced at the folder Dawson still held. "And I'd like to learn more about the history you shared. About my grandfather and your father." Martha nodded, understanding. "Of course. When you're ready. I have letters, photographs, a whole history your family deserves to know." She reached into her handbag and withdrew a small object, offering it to Sarah. "For now, I thought you might want this." "It belonged to your grandfather. My father kept it all these years." Sarah accepted the item, a tarnished silver pocket watch engraved with her grandfather's initials. The unexpected connection to her family's past brought a lump to her throat. "Thank you," she whispered, closing her fingers around the cool metal. "It should never have been a feud," Martha said softly. "What began as love shouldn't have ended in hatred. Perhaps now both our families can find peace." As Martha departed, Dr. Abernathy returned with an update. "Rex is resting comfortably. His vital signs are stable, and the swelling is noticeably reduced. I believe we've turned the corner." "When can we take him home?" Sarah asked, then realized with a pang that home no longer existed as she'd known it. "I'd like to keep him under observation for another 24 hours. After that, if his progress continues, he can be discharged with medication and a rehabilitation plan." The veterinarian smiled. "He'll need physical therapy for the damaged muscle tissue, but given his military background, I expect he'll be a model patient. Working dogs usually are. They understand the connection between rehabilitation exercises and returning to duty." "His duty is protecting Jacob," Sarah said, glancing at her son, who was now falling asleep against her shoulder. "And he's already fulfilled that beyond measure." 3 days later, Sarah stood in the driveway of Mark Collins' mother-in-law cottage, watching as a military transport vehicle carefully delivered Rex to his temporary home. The German Shepherd was alert but subdued, his normally powerful frame moving gingerly as he was helped from the vehicle by 2 uniformed handlers. When he spotted Sarah and Jacob waiting on the porch, his entire demeanor changed. Despite his injuries, Rex's tail began to wag, and he pulled forward with renewed energy. "Easy, boy," one of the handlers cautioned. "You're still healing." But Rex was determined. He made his way up the porch steps with deliberate care, stopping directly in front of Jacob, who sat in a portable playpen. The baby squealed with delight, reaching his chubby hands toward the dog he clearly recognized. "Gentle, Jacob," Sarah murmured, though she knew the warning was unnecessary. Despite his injuries, Rex positioned himself protectively beside the playpen, his body language relaxed, but vigilant exactly as he'd done since arriving in their lives. "He's resuming his post," Sergeant Dawson observed from beside the transport vehicle. "Military working dogs never really retire from their mission. They just change battlefields." Over the following weeks, a new routine established itself. Rex grew stronger each day, diligently performing the rehabilitation exercises prescribed by the military veterinarians. Jacob thrived in the peaceful setting of the cottage, taking his first tentative steps while holding on to Rex's fur for balance, a milestone that brought both laughter and tears from Sarah. The investigation into the tailor's actions continued, with each new revelation more disturbing than the last. The deliberate sabotage of Sarah's home had been more extensive than initially thought, with evidence suggesting they had even tampered with the electrical wiring to create fire hazards. Harold and Eleanor remained in custody, denied bail due to the severity of the charges and the calculated nature of their crimes. Martha Taylor became an unexpected ally, providing investigators with crucial information about her sister and brother-in-law's activities while continuing to offer support to Sarah. Her stories about Thomas Miller and William Taylor, their friendship, their love, and the tragic misunderstandings that had twisted into a multi-generational feud helped Sarah connect with her family's history in ways she'd never anticipated. As summer gave way to fall, Sarah faced decisions about their future. Martha's offer of her property remained open. The military had expressed interest in having Rex work part-time with their PTSD therapy program for returning veterans. Mark had suggested that Sarah consider returning to nursing at the local VA hospital, where her experience with both medical trauma and military families would be invaluable. Options that had seemed unimaginable in the immediate aftermath of disaster now presented themselves as possibilities for a new beginning. One crisp October morning, Sarah sat on the cottage porch, watching as Rex and Jacob played in the yard. The German Shepherd had regained most of his strength, though he still favored his left front leg slightly, a permanent reminder of his sacrifice. Jacob, now a toddling 10-month-old, giggled as he chased falling leaves, always within the protective radius of Rex's watchful presence. In her hands, Sarah held James's last letter, its edges softened from frequent reading. The words that had once brought pain now offered comfort, a reminder that, even in death, James had found a way to protect them through Rex. "You were right," she whispered to the memory of her husband. "He does see things we don't. He protected our son just as he protected you." Rex's ears perked up at the sound of her voice, his intelligent eyes meeting hers across the yard. In that moment of connection, Sarah felt a sense of peace settle over her. The path forward wasn't clear yet, but they would find their way together, she, Jacob, and the extraordinary dog who had become their guardian, their hero, and their family. The journey ahead would have challenges, but they faced them with the strength that comes from surviving the worst and finding unexpected blessings amid loss. Whatever home they chose, whatever future they built, they would carry forward the legacy of love and protection that James had entrusted to them through Rex, a legacy written not just in James's final letter, but in the unbreakable bond between a child and the dog who would lay down his life to keep him safe. In the quiet moments of reflection, we often discover life's most profound truths. Sarah's journey reminds us that loyalty and protection come in unexpected forms, sometimes with 4 legs and a steadfast heart. For those of us who've experienced loss, who've had to rebuild our lives after tragedy, her story resonates deeply. We understand how precious second chances are. Rex's unwavering devotion to baby Jacob mirrors the commitment many of us have made to our own families, the willingness to sacrifice everything for those we love. As we enter our golden years, carrying the wisdom of experiences both bitter and sweet, we recognize in this story the values that truly matter, family bonds that transcend even death, the courage to begin again after devastating loss, and the healing power of unconditional love. Sarah found strength she never knew she possessed, because she had no choice but to be strong for her child, just as many of us have done through life's challenges. Sometimes the greatest heroes aren't found in grand gestures, but in simple acts of protection and love, day after day, through the worst of times and the best. In that faithful German shepherd, we see reflections of our own best selves,